is it.
We have unfinished business to do. A glass ceiling to crack once and for all.
Just 2 days left until an epic Election Day showdown.
Can you believe it? Days away from the change you've been waiting for your entire life.
This is history.
From Beyonce and Jay-Z to Barack and Michelle.
They want to bamboozle you. Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to be president.
Clinton bringing in the big guns to try to motivate black and young voters. Will it work? And with Trump closing in on Clinton in key states, could he pull it off?
No sidetracks, Donald. Nice and easy.
The very latest on where the map stands right now. Plus, the best political minds will be here with insights from the campaign trail. A special edition of State of the Union with limited commercial interruptions starts now. Hello, I'm Dick Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is down to the wire. Just hours to go now until the American people pick a new president. The stakes are high, so are the tensions, especially perhaps among Democrats who see the race tightening in key states. Hillary Clinton's campaign has been banking on a blue wall. Die-hard Democratic states she was banking on for a victory, but Donald Trump says not so fast.
We're going into what they used to call Democrat strongholds, where we're now either tied or leading. We're going to Minnesota. We're going up to Minnesota, which traditionally has not been Republican at all, and we're doing phenomenally. We just saw a poll.
Minnesota, a state that has not gone red in a presidential contest since the Nixon landslide of 1972. And now Trump and his running mate Mike Pence are both going to be there today and tomorrow in these precious last few hours. So does Trump know something that the rest of us don't, or is this wishful, perhaps even desperate, electoral map thinking? Minnesota's Democratic Senator Al Franken joins us now. Senator Franken, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
So let's start with your home state of Minnesota. Donald Trump is headed there today, Pence tomorrow. Republicans say they're within striking distance. Is Hillary Clinton at risk of losing your state, which has not gone Republican since 72?
I don't think so. I'm, Jake, kind of the poster boy for close elections. I had a very close election here in Minnesota in 2008, won by 312 votes. So what I've been focused on the last actually couple months is on turnout, especially last month, doing canvassing all over the country or talking to canvassing offices, urging our people to get on the doors. I think we have a great ground game. I've been, and I'm spending this last week in Minnesota doing that.
Let's turn to another traditionally blue state in presidential contests, Michigan. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, all campaigning there in the final stretch before the election. It's a state that was once thought to be safely in the Democratic column this year. Is Hillary Clinton at risk of losing this Democratic firewall of states such as Michigan?
Again, I'm not a pundit. What I do know is that I've been for Hillary this whole time, all along. She's the smartest, hardest working, toughest person I know. I think she would be great as president. You know, Jake, when a decision comes to the president, it's because only the president can make that decision. And the president has to draw on his, and I believe soon her, all her past experience and knowledge, and I want her doing that, and I don't trust Donald Trump because I don't think he has any really depth or breadth of knowledge about public policy anyway.
There are a lot of Democrats out there who are nervous, who are anxious. Are you among them?
Oh, sure. I'm always nervous. I was nervous in 12. I was nervous in 8. For good reason. I won by 12 votes. But I mean, we run through the finish line. This is what I tell everybody that I go to canvassing centers. I say, many of you have jobs, many of you have families. Ignore them. Get on the doors.
I want to ask you about this new 2-minute ad that the Trump campaign is going to be airing. It blasts the Washington and global establishment. It uses images of Obama and Clinton, but some columnists have noted that there are 3 other individuals in the ad: George Soros, Janet Yellen, Lloyd Blankfein, the financier, the Fed chair, and the chair of Goldman Sachs. And people have pointed out all 3 of them happen to be Jewish. What was your take when you saw the ad?
Well, when I saw the ad, I thought that this was something of a German Shepherd whistle, a dog whistle, to sort of a certain group in the United States. I think I'm Jewish, so maybe I'm sensitive to it, but it clearly had sort of Elders of Zion kind of feel to it, international banking crisis plot, or conspiracy rather, and then a number of Jews. So I think that it does speak to a certain part of his alt-right base. The Bannon, who's head of Breitbart, is his chairman. They traffic in that. Trump has retweeted a lot of that sort of thing, and I think that it's an appeal to some of the worst elements in our country as a closing argument. And I think that people who aren't sensitive to that or don't know that history may not see that in that, but that's what I immediately saw.
I want to ask you about this news broken by Reuters that the Clinton Foundation confirmed that it did accept a $1 million gift from Qatar while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State without informing the State Department, even though they had made that as an assertion of rules that they would inform the State Department. Do you think going forward, if Hillary Clinton wins on Tuesday, does the Clinton Foundation need to be shut down, completely shut down, so as to eliminate any possible conflicts of interest or appearances of influence peddling?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Qatar, we have a base in Qatar. People should remember that. I mean, I've been on a number of USO tours before I became senator to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I know that Qatar is very important in our presence in the region. The Clinton Foundation has saved millions of lives. I think that sometimes people should compare the two foundations, the Trump Foundation and the Clinton Foundation, which got the HIV drugs to millions of people, versus the Trump Foundation, which doesn't seem to have done much of anything for anybody.
I hear you, sir, but is it not? I mean, the idea that there is this foundation that is the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation out there raising tens of millions of dollars while she is potentially president of the United States, doesn't that create a possible real problem for her that's not worth undermining her presidency? There are questions about when individuals, groups, countries, corporations give money.
No, I take your point, and maybe there's some way to continue the good work that the foundation does and do it under a completely different, different people running it, so that there is no conflict of interest. I think that needs clearly to be looked at, and I'm sure that I can't see them not responding to that critique and finding a way to completely divorce that from her. That's a good idea, I think.
Hillary Clinton was asked this week about FBI Director James Comey and whether she, if she wins, would ask him to resign. Take a listen.
I'm I'm not going to, get ahead of myself by assuming I'll be fortunate enough to be elected. I also would never comment on any kind of, personnel issue.
As a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, do you have an opinion as to whether or not you have confidence in the prospect of FBI Director Comey moving forward, overseeing the email investigation and any possible inquiries into the Clinton Foundation?
I think what's troubling, we've heard out of the FBI, I think it was troubling that he put that vague letter out 11 days before the election. I think even more troubling is what we've heard from sort of the rogue elements within the FBI, seemingly tipping off former Mayor Giuliani that something was up. And also, I mean, they just seem like that's not the FBI. That's not what the FBI is supposed to do. It seems so. I'm on the Judiciary Committee. I'm sure we will have hearings. I'm sure that FBI Director Comey will be before us, and I think he should answer questions about this, and he should be able to control the FBI. He's director of the FBI. He should be able to. What's been happening there has been a little hinky, I think.
But as you know,
so
FBI
we'll
directors.
Questions.
Yeah, FBI directors are basically appointed for 10-year terms. He's served 3.
Right.
Do you have confidence that he can continue in that job for the next 7 years if Hillary Clinton wins?
I think we're going to have hearings. I think we're going to try to get to the bottom of this sort of rogue element within the FBI that seems to think it's okay to go outside the FBI to be trying to affect the election. That seems to be responding to just scurrilous right-wing books and starting investigations based on that kind of that kind of propaganda that we've seen before. That's disturbing, and if you're director of the FBI, you should be able to prevent that from happening. That's part of being leading an organization, is to keep that organization on its mission, and this is so apart and separate from anything they've ever done before that they're very, very important questions to be asking Director Comey.
So you're calling for hearings to talk to Director Comey about these what you call rogue elements in the FBI?
Yeah, I think that there should be hearings, and I'm certain there will be hearings in the Judiciary Committee on this matter.
Let me ask you about the election going forward. There are signs that Latino early voting is up significantly, but that African American early voting, especially in several key states like North Carolina, is down. Are you concerned about what this might mean for Hillary Clinton on Tuesday?
Well, on the African American vote in North Carolina, I think that we've seen in the last week there has been an effort to suppress that vote, and I think African American North Carolinians have gotten that message, and the reaction to that usually is increased turnout. So I think that their effort to suppress people, to purge the rolls. Remember, the president told about this 100-year-old woman who was purged and wrote him a letter, and that went to a judge who called this insane, what was going on. I think that's going to actually spur African Americans in North Carolina to turn out.
Senator Al Franken of the great state of Minnesota, we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jake. Always good to talk to you.
Nice talking to you, sir. Donald Trump is keeping up a relentless schedule, hitting several time zones a day to maximize his remaining hours, but he faced a frightening moment in Reno, Nevada last night as Secret Service rushed Trump off the stage and security forces stormed the audience after panic in the crowd. Now, what we've learned is what apparently happened is a protester tried to raise a Republicans Against Trump sign. That protester was confronted by people in the crowd, tackled, and someone in the crowd apparently incorrectly yelled that the protester had a gun. The U.S. Secret Service says that no weapon was found. They report that no one was hurt. Mr. Trump returned to the stage not long after and resumed his campaign pitch. Joining me now from New York is Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jake. Hi.
So first of all, we're glad everyone's okay. I have to ask, your social media director, Dan Scavino, and a member of Mr. Trump's family, they're retweeting misinformation that this was an assassination attempt. It was not an assassination attempt. Thankfully, should they be spreading this misinformation?
Well, I'm glad you're happy that everybody's okay. That's really the main focus here. It's scary. I mean, all the coverage is usually about our protesters wreaking havoc and making people feel afraid, and this certainly goes both ways. I'm with Mr. Trump and the Secret Service routinely. They do an amazing job. They are absolutely the unsung heroes, I'm sure, for Mrs. Clinton as well and the Secret Service. We really respect those men and women enormously, and I'm glad nobody was hurt, but it does remind you that in these closing days, especially as the polls tighten, many of us are getting more death threats, getting more angry messages on social media and elsewhere, and it's a pretty fraught environment there. I think that's the real focus here. I also just want to point out, because some people are spreading misinformation about the protester, he had canvassed for Hillary Clinton and he had donated to her campaign. So this is a Democratic plant or operative trying to disrupt our rally, and I think that people saw a nimble, resilient Donald Trump, who would be nimble and resilient as president as well, take back to the stage Dan Scavino telling people, we're not going to be stopped, nobody can interrupt this movement. But, if you're Don Jr. and you're on a live TV set while you're watching this unfold, it's pretty rattling to think of what may have happened to your father. So I'll excuse him that.
Except it wasn't an assassination attempt. It was apparently a local voter, a Republican, who says he is supporting Hillary Clinton. He has given money to Hillary Clinton. He has canvassed for Hillary Clinton, yes. But he says he's a Republican. But most importantly, he was not trying to assassinate anyone. Here's what I'm talking about. Let's put it up. Donald Trump Jr. and Dan Scavino retweeted this, quote, Hillary ran away from rain today. Trump is back on stage minutes after assassination attempt. Again, we're very happy that this was not an assassination attempt, but why is your campaign spreading that it was?
Well, how do you, first of all, that's really remarkable, I have to say, that that's what the storyline is here. I thank you for reminding everybody that the rain chased her away. There weren't a lot of people there at her rally to begin with, and the rain just let them running for cover. I think she's got to sort of travel nonstop with Beyonce, Jay-Z, and the likes of that just to prop her up and get a decent crowd. People, by the way, are there to see Beyonce, not to see her. Jake, I want to say, are CNN going to retract all the storylines, all the headlines, all the breathless predictions of the last 2 weeks that turned out not to be true? The race is over. The path is closed. It's going to be a blowout. You guys retract that, and I'll give a call to Dan Scavino about the retweet.
I never reported anything along those lines. I've always been saying that this was going to be a tight election, and even when Hillary... Who hasn't?
CNN certainly has. CNN certainly has. I love CNN, but you got to be honest here. The lower third, what's always on the chyrons, the panelists, the so-called experts, constantly saying she can't lose, the race is over, the path is narrowed. And you know what? I actually thank you guys in part for that.
I've never heard anybody say the race is over. We've been saying all along that Donald Trump has a path to the presidency, and you can say wow all you want. I've never said that the race was over. We can replay it as many tapes as you want. Let's move on. I want to play something that was said on Sunday at that same rally by the chairman of the Nevada Republican Party, Michael McDonald, and by your candidate, Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Last night in Clark County, they kept a poll open till 10 o'clock at night so a certain group could vote. It wasn't in an area that normally has high transition. The polls are supposed to close at 7. This was kept open till 10.
It's being reported that certain key Democratic polling locations in Clark County were kept open for hours and hours beyond closing time to bus and bring Democratic voters in. Folks, it's a rigged system.
Kellyanne, a spokesperson for Clark County, Nevada, said that folks who were in line before the polls closed were allowed to stay in line and vote. I'm sure you know that that's a common practice throughout the country. If a whole bunch of Trump voters are in line when the polls close in Ohio, should they not be allowed to vote, or would you want the polls closed only after every single one of them in line at the closing time was allowed to vote?
We just always want the law followed and the rules followed, and I do predict that you're going to see really long lines, serpentine-like lines on Tuesday of folks there for Donald Trump. You're going to see record turnout in many of these places. But look, it's concerning when you hear reports about special favors and perhaps special rules for Democratic voters. We already know that their presidential nominee has special rules for her.
What's this? I don't
saying
understand.
that we got reports of that.
If people are in line when the polls close, the people who are in line at that cutoff time are traditionally, and in some places by law, allowed to vote. You want that to happen on Tuesday with Trump voters. That's what Clark County was reportedly doing with other voters.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the discrepancy.
We've not been able to independently verify that, but I'm telling you that we just want the rules and the law followed, and that'll be fine. But excuse us that the Democratic presidential nominee is somebody who lives under a separate set of rules than the rest of us. That's very clear. She gets to set up private email servers and lie about it and flout the law and compromise your kids and my kids' national security. Well, but that's what the voters are focused on too. We have a report this morning that she has her maid, one of her housekeepers, printing out classified information. Who is this person who is so selfish and so peevish?
I don't know what reporting you're for. But my question is, if voters are in line at a cutoff time, and the county says you're in line at 7 o'clock, therefore we're going to wait until everybody in line at this cutoff point can vote, what's the problem?
If that is true, there isn't a problem. But we don't know that that's true, and we'll all take a look at Tuesday as well. But yes, we just want the rules and the law followed. But remember, the Democratic Party chose to clear the field, and he's been saying that the system is rigged for a long time, and apparently millions of voters agree.
No, but he was talking specifically about you don't have the information. Mr. Trump is saying that the system is rigged with these voters who are American citizens voting, and I'm just trying to figure out why that's a problem, why that's an example of anything being rigged. People are allowed to exercise the right to vote as long as they're in time at the cutoff point.
Right, Jake, on that we agree. Now, we've now said it 4 times because I'm sure it's a better storyline to discuss than the tightening polls and the fact that we're playing follow the leader and Hillary Clinton is following us to Michigan, following us to Pennsylvania, following us to Wisconsin, following us to New Hampshire, all these blue states on her schedule now for an arrogant campaign that's booked fireworks in New York to celebrate her victory on Tuesday night. She's got the President of the United States running around to blue states that he carried twice just to prop her up. That's actually the big story this morning. But if we want to say for the 4th time and agree together for the 4th time that if, big conditional word, if the law is being followed and people are in line, they ought to be able to vote. Donald Trump's been talking about a rigged system all along. His poll numbers started to tighten right after that 3rd debate. And part of it was him talking about a rigged, corrupt system where people just can't get a break. He's the voice for the forgotten man, forgotten woman. And since then, we've seen the polls continue to tighten to the point where we're deploying our 2 best assets, Mr. Trump and Governor Pence, in traditionally blue states that Barack Obama carried twice with well more than 50% of the vote, a number Hillary Clinton hasn't seen all along. Why is this woman who starts out with 248 electoral votes unable to find 22 more? I mean, it's absolutely confounding. She just can't find the extra 22.
It's a very competitive race. Very competitive race, and we've been covering the fact that we've been covering it that way, and we led the show with a senator from Minnesota to talk about the fact that Mr. Trump is going into Minnesota today.
He sounded very worried, by the way.
He said he was worried. Your campaign's created a final 2-minute closing ad. I want you to take a listen to part of it.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election.
It's a populist message. It takes on Wall Street. Can you tell me one policy that Donald Trump would enact that Goldman Sachs will not like?
They probably would not like the fact that he is going to renegotiate trade deals and bring jobs back from China and Mexico, make Americans keep American jobs here. I can't imagine that, that a lot of people on Wall Street appreciate that. They seem to like the way the policies have been going more recently.
Why would Goldman Sachs not? Why would Goldman Sachs not? Why would Goldman Sachs? Why would they be against trade deals that benefit the American worker?
Well, they don't necessarily benefit Goldman Sachs, but I think more to the point, when you go back and look at TARP, which we got from a Republican president, and it was continued by a Democratic president, Donald Trump would not be for that. And that benefits all these big banks who didn't need the help. In some cases, were forced to take the money because the government
that was
told them to.
2007, 2008 legislation. That was legislation from 8 years ago. But
right. Well, you guys
Trump's
always want to talk about the Iraq War, which was 5 years before that.
Right.
Look, he's going to stimulate energy investment. Does Goldman Sachs agree? And Goldman Sachs is a big place, so let's not, not make this an overwrought question and answer. But does Goldman Sachs want the kind of energy independence that Donald Trump wants, so that we stop relying upon foreign sources of oil and we start unleashing the energy that's off of our shores and under our feet right here in the U.S., spur economic growth within our communities, do the hydraulic fracturing that's unleashing the natural gas that we have right here? Are they? So there are many different. Well, there you go. Well, there's an answer. In other words, let's ask them. But the fact is, Hillary Clinton is a tool of the big banks that gave her. And I'll tell you one more thing he wouldn't do. But one more thing he wouldn't do, he wouldn't take gazillions of dollars in speaking fees from big banks and then pretend that somehow he's going to regulate them or somehow he's going to be for the people. I mean, if Hillary Clinton were a legitimately
we have no idea what he's taken in speaking fees
against Wall Street.
Donald Trump has given speeches for money. He has given speeches for money, but we have no idea how much money because he refuses to release his tax returns.
Well, Hillary Clinton, as CNN has reported, Hillary Clinton has made tens of millions of dollars on speeches, and she gives them for free now, and nobody seems to want to show up and listen to them. So, I mean, her crowds look like
we know that she's made that money because she's released her tax returns. We know that she's made that money because she's released her tax returns.
No, we know she's made that money because the Clintons are all about money, and we just got confirmation that $1 million gift from Qatar for Bill Clinton's birthday. Look, Americans look at that and they say, last time I celebrated my husband's birthday, no foreign government gave us $1 million. Nobody said in emails, we want to make sure that Bill Clinton Inc. makes about $66 million. That's a lot of money. $28 million from Morocco. I mean, this is just not normal. And by the way, Americans, it's not necessary. You don't have to start the next 4 years under a cloud of corruption and unanswered questions by grifting and gifting among people who always put themselves first. I mean, if that weren't true,
there's a lot of unanswered questions about. There's a lot of unanswered questions about Donald Trump because he doesn't release his tax returns. He has given speeches for money. We're told that we have no idea what they are because he won't be transparent with the American people about where his money is or where he's taking money from.
He's very transparent. Here's what Americans should look at when they see. Here's what they should see when they look at Donald Trump. 104-page financial disclosure form. Everybody can pull it up right now.
The first major party candidate to not release tax returns since 1976.
Well, he's the first major party candidate to truly be outside of politics, and that's what people see. He's built a movement. Everywhere he shows, he's like 5 stops yesterday. Everywhere he shows, there's just thousands and thousands of people there in these so-called blue states. But we're supposed, and then the media asks, but will they vote? No, they just stood in line for 5 hours to go to a rally, 15,000 strong, but they're not going to show up on Tuesday. We know momentum and enthusiasm matter, and we know when people see Donald Trump, they see somebody who's a job creator, a builder, a problem solver, a fixer, somebody who's got vision, and goes to Washington, Jake, owing nobody anything, and certainly hasn't. I can guarantee you his tax returns don't show millions of dollars from foreign governments giving to his family's foundation.
We have no idea what they show because he won't release them.
Well,
you can't guarantee that because you have no idea what they show because he won't release his tax returns. He won't release his tax returns, so you can't guarantee anything.
Is he under FBI investigation? Did he ask his housekeeper to print out national security classified emails? I mean, this woman has no respect for the law.
I know that there are investigations by the New York Attorney General into Trump University. I know that there's a court case involving Trump University. I know there's plenty of things that Mr. Trump has not answered questions on. I want to ask you, Mr. Trump is asking the American people to make him commander-in-chief on Tuesday, just 48 hours from now. I want to show you what Mr. Trump said on Saturday about U.S. military commanders participating in the Iraqi effort to recapture Mosul from ISIS. Take a listen.
Whatever happened to the element of surprise? Right, the element of surprise. What a group of losers we have.
How is Mr. Trump going to be able to work with the members of Central Command and U.S. military leaders if he's been calling them a group of losers?
No, he's basically referring to the current commander-in-chief and his former Secretary of State when he says that. He made that very clear in the debates as well. His problem is that you got a commander-in-chief and you've got his former Secretary of State, who just happens to want to be the next commander-in-chief, having an awful record, according to Mosul, an awful record on the Syrian fake red lines, the Russian reset, the Middle East, Northern Africa several years ago with what was supposed to be a great Arab Spring. They own all these hot spots around the globe, and people ought to know that. They ought to see not what people say, but what they've done. And in the case of Hillary Clinton and her former boss, Barack Obama, that has not gone well, Jake. I don't think anybody can dispute that. If people thought their foreign policy and national security records were so great, she would be running away with this. She would say, look, I've been there. I was in the room. I made these tough decisions. I was Secretary of State. Therefore, I'm ready to be Commander-in-Chief. Why is she tied among why is he winning among veteran households, military households so handily? He's beating her by double digits because people don't trust her to be Commander-in-Chief. They think she's disqualified herself. She's unfit because she runs around with confidential information on some pervert server, having her maid printed out. I mean, this is somebody who's totally disqualified herself from being Commander-in-Chief based on her own actions.
All right, Kellyanne Conway, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Good luck on Tuesday. With the race this close, both Clinton and Trump campaign officials are worried about the effect that third-party candidates might have on the ballots, concerned that they could sway victory in tight battleground states such as New Hampshire. The latest CNN poll of polls nationally shows the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson and his running mate Bill Weld with 4% of the vote, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein with 2%, enough to prompt President Obama to issue this stark warning.
Anybody sitting on the sidelines right now or deciding to engage in a protest vote, that's a vote for Trump.
Here to respond is one half of the Libertarian Party ticket, Bill Weld, Gary Johnson's running mate, former governor of Massachusetts. Governor Weld, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jake. Pleasure.
So you've said a lot of nice things about Hillary Clinton lately, and you've made it clear that you consider Donald Trump a clear and present danger to the nation. I know you want the Libertarian Party to get that 5% it needs in order to go forward and continue to be a thriving American political party. But I have to say, sometimes it sounds like you want to endorse Clinton. Am I reading you wrong?
Well, you're correct, Jake, that I do want the Libertarian Party to get over 5% in the vote, because that would give the Libertarian Party a permanent seat at the table in our ongoing national political dialogue. And I do think one of the issues in this campaign has been, do you like the two-party monopoly, the R party and the D party in Washington, D.C.? We don't like that monopoly. That's the monopoly that kept us out of the debates and, deprived us of the chance to run the table. Having said all of that, I do see a big difference between the two other candidates, Mr. Trump and Mrs. Clinton. I do think that Mr. Trump, with all deference, is totally unfit to be president of the United States. I don't think he has the stability to... He has the temperament to deal with all the many, many stakeholders at home and abroad that any president is going to have to do it. And, I think it's a measure of how much our politics has sunk this year that when I say anything even faintly civil about Mrs. Clinton, there are shrieks of outrage. How could he say that? Doesn't he realize that she's the enemy because she's on another ticket? Well, she's not the enemy. She's a perfectly reputable, professional, responsible candidate for president of the United States and deserves to be treated as such.
It's just an odd position you're in, I guess, because you're on one of the tickets and yet you're saying something nice. And you're reality-based. You know that Gary Johnson is not going to be the next president of the United States. You're not going to be the next vice president of the United States. And in some ways, it might seem to some critics that you're trying to have it both ways, not endorsing Clinton, but you want no responsibility if you and Governor Johnson tip the election in any way to Donald Trump. Am I being unfair?
Well, I am on the ticket, and tens of thousands of people in the libertarian ranks have worked very hard to try to get us to this point, which is a high point to date for the Libertarian Party. You never know where a vote is coming from. My belief is that the Libertarian Party pulls substantially more from Mr. Trump than from Mrs. Clinton. I'm well aware there was an earlier media boomlet for the idea that, oh no, all our voters were millennials and we were pulling millennials from Mrs. Clinton. That's not my understanding of what the detailed polling shows. But, you know, we've got a perfect right to try to draw our vote just as everyone else does. But I have made plain my view of the two candidates, and frankly, I think, you know, Mrs. Clinton recently has been receiving a pretty raw deal from people trying to fan the flames that there's some huge FBI new investigation of her email server, and, you know, there are obviously Republican members of Congress who are in that hunt. It does appear that there may be some disgruntled FBI agents who appear to think that somehow they've been cheated of their prey. That's not how the system is supposed to work. And I think Jim Comey is a real good guy, real good reputation in the Justice Department for a long time, but I do think he made a mistake sending that letter to Congress, which is essentially the equivalent of a press release, not quite saying we're reopening the investigation, because that was not done, but certainly fanning the flames and jumping into the middle of a presidential election with 10 or 11 days to go. That's not what the FBI is supposed to be all about, and it was just a 180-degree violation of long-standing practice and principles of the Justice Department.
Well, Governor, are you saying that you think that the FBI director should step down or should resign?
No, I'm not saying that. And, you know, I think one thing that's happened, everyone is so anxious because this is such a watershed election. It's a conscience election. Everyone's going to remember who they voted for this year. I think the stakes are so high because the standing of the two major candidates is so disparate. It'll be like, you know, everyone remembers where they were when they heard about 9/11. Everyone who is old enough remembers where they were when President Kennedy was shot. I think people are going to look back on this election and really reflect on the vote that they took. And I think it's a year when people have to think for themselves and cast a vote of conscience.
Let me ask you about the state of New Hampshire. You're from neighboring Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Take a look at this poll from WBUR-TV. It shows Trump 40%, Clinton 39%, Johnson Weld 10%. So you are having an impact on who might win that key battleground state in New Hampshire and those 4 crucial electoral votes. Are you comfortable with the fact that support for you might tip New Hampshire and thus the presidency to one of the candidates? And since you are not comfortable with Donald Trump, what if it is tipping it towards Donald Trump?
Well, that's in a way conjectural, but the answer is, yeah, I am comfortable with us pursuing the best we can get as a libertarian ticket. You know, I remind you and the audience that we are fiscally responsible and socially inclusive. We think that's the best combination of positions, and it's one reason why I do think it's important to have the libertarians have a seat at that table in Washington. It's not like we would be a threat to the stability of the republic. We don't have a parliamentary system. We have a fixed term system in the United States, so you're not going to have an inability because of extra parties to get to a decision on the presidency. But I think the Republican Party has a lot to learn from us about being socially inclusive. I think the Democratic Party has a lot to learn from us about being fiscally responsible and balancing the budget, which we have pledged to do in our first 100 days. So I think it'd be a long, cool drink of water for Washington to have us there, so I don't feel at all apologetic about us trying to get
all right. Governor Weld, good luck on Tuesday. Thank you so much, sir. Donald Trump's last-minute bid for Minnesota, along with heavy campaigning in Michigan, has many Democrats taking a second look at their traditional blue wall of electoral votes, which is why President Bill Clinton is campaigning there today, followed by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama tomorrow. So is the blue wall crumbling like blue cheese? CNN's David Chalian is at the magic wall with all the very latest. David?